Well, it's about time. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Thanks again for coming. And again, this is more casual than our webinars. As Debbie gives her presentation, for example, feel free if you have a question about a particular point, go ahead and ask your question just then. Otherwise, we'll have Debbie run through it and then open it up for conversation, questions, more ideas, how we can follow up on this terrific grassroots kind of outreach. And one of the things that really fascinated me when I first saw the announcement about what Debbie's trying to organize here is that going door to door was the first thing that I ever did as an activist 55 years ago in 1968, going door to door for Gene McCarthy for president. And as a 16-year-old, it was a real education. Not only, I was supposed to be educating the voters, but I felt like I got a real education too. It's a real two-way street kind of thing. So of all the people I've introduced on various programs, it's always tempting to say the person doesn't really need an introduction. I think in Debbie's case, it's probably really true, because I don't know of anybody in this area that doesn't know our leading environmental activist, Debbie Mytels. And Debbie, if you want to give any of your history with Acterra or Peninsula Conservation Center, I'll let you go with that. But let me turn this over to you and talk about this great outreach program to get rid of nasty natural gas from our homes. Welcome, okay. Debbie.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk about this. And I look forward to a conversation with the folks in here, because I see some other familiar names too, Joan Ferguson, Carol Waseski, and others who've been involved in different community projects over the years too. Anyway, what I've been working on, I did retire about 4 years ago from full-time work at Acterra, which is a nonprofit environmental education and action group. And since then, I've mostly been focusing on the issue of climate change and specifically electrification. And that's kind of a long, hard word to say, but it basically means switching out of the gas burning appliances in our homes and changing to electric ones, because we have clean, green electricity in our wires now. And it's almost every hour of electricity that we have comes from solar or wind or hydropower, and a few from geothermal, and a little bit still from the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant. So we're not really burning coal, certainly, and very little natural gas in California. We do have a little bit of electricity that comes imported in when it's, nighttime or in a cold, miserable day like today. In any case, we have clean, green electricity, and we need to use it because it's carbon free and it's not going to be contributing to climate change. And really, just an important point to point out about natural gas, which has been, termed that, but it's not really any more natural than coal or oil because it's a fossil product. And it really is methane gas, and they add a little bit of chemicals to it so it smells, so you can smell it a little bit if it's leaking, but it's really not natural any better than any other fossil fuel. It's a dirty product. And it looks like it burns clean because we don't see the smoke, but it actually produces formaldehyde and nitrous oxide and other trace elements when it's burned. And the carbon dioxide contributes to climate change. But methane is a problem not only when it's being burned, it's also a problem when it's not burned. And that is an issue too, because it's 80 times more retentive of the sun's heat when it goes up into the upper atmosphere. And that means it's a really significant problem. And if we could stop using methane now, we would be able to reduce climate change, the expansion of climate change significantly. And that's really important to keep in mind as well. In addition, methane gas is actually a health and safety issue. And we all know that living here in California earthquake country, the first thing we need to do is figure out how to turn off the gas outside of our house, because if there's a spark, it could catch fire and have an explosion. And many of us that have lived here for a while are familiar with the 2011 big explosion that happened in San Bruno, when 8 people were killed and 30 some odd houses were blown up, poof, like that, because there was an underground pipe that was leaking. And those underground pipes with gas are going underneath all of our streets. And we live in houses often, especially here in the peninsula, that are at least 50, if not more, years old. And these pipes are old and they're supposed to hold together like that, but they break and an earthquake makes them shake a little bit. And I recently was talking to a facilities engineer who told me that, well, gas is pressurized from the wellhead and that pushes it out through all the pipes so that it will be available when you turn on your gas stove or something. And he said, that also it looks for any little crack in a pipe and pushes its way through because it's pressurized to do that. And that means that any little crack is there is going to be expanded and expanded and expanded, and gas is leaking. And I've heard people from the utilities industry say that they know that there's a difference between how much gas is being extracted from the wells and how much they're billing us for. And the difference can be from 2 to 15%. And where's that gas going? It's leaking out through all these pipes. So if we can stop gas leaking, we'd also improve safety, we'd also improve the climate, and we'd also improve health. There are more and more studies being done now, particularly a big one at UCLA. I found that about 20% of kids that grow up in a kitchen or a house which is burning gas in the kitchen are likely to develop asthma. And this is particularly true in people who live in small apartments where, the parents are cooking and the kids are playing around on the floor and they're breathing in these formaldehydes and other noxious gases that are the products of combustion. That's the reason why we have a vent hood over our stoves if we have a gas stove. I never use mine because it's so noisy. I can't talk. I can't hear the radio.
We have the same model.
Yeah. So I've got an order to get an induction cooktop. But we're not here to talk about cooking today. We're here to talk about gas water heaters because the city of Palo Alto has given us a really great opportunity, and I want to invite you to learn about that. And I guess David could put up the slide with a link to that. The city of Palo Alto has realized that it's a real hassle for people who want to change their appliances to figure out, who's going to be the contractor, who do I have to choose? I don't know any gas furnace or water heater contractors. I would have to figure out what equipment to purchase, and I need to negotiate the price. And also, how am I going to pay for this? These do cost in the several $1,000s range. So those are obstacles that people have. So if people want to change their water heater, for example, well, how are they going to do it? They've got to do all this research. They've got to do all this financial calculations. So there's a wonderful group in Palo Alto called Carbon Free Palo Alto. And they said, let's get rid of these obstacles. And, you leave it to a nonprofit community grassroots group like Carbon Free Palo Alto. And they say, well, let's have a city contractor do the work. Let's have it be paid for by people paying for it on their utility bill. And fortunately, in Palo Alto, we do have a municipal utility, and we can do all that. And it took Carbon Free Palo Alto about 4 or 5 years to talk the city council and the staff into doing this, but they have done it. So they have a great new program for us now. It just started in January. They've hired a contractor. It's a company called Synergy, which has done this already in Sacramento area because they also have a municipal utility there called Sacramento Municipal Utility, SMUD. And so they've got an experienced contractor that has worked with particular installations of water heaters on a large scale. And they've decided what particular equipment they're going to use. And you can get a tank that's small, medium, or large. And there's a small price differential on that. And basically, they've also set up a standard price, which is $2,700 for the medium-sized tank. And that's a reasonable price considering that other people who are going out and getting their own contractor and paying permit fees and buying the equipment themselves are usually paying over $4,000 for a gas heat pump water heater. And they can get some rebates back to make it down to in the $2,000 to $3,000 range usually. But it's nice that the city has a standard set price. And then lastly, for Palo Alto utility customers, in addition, they're saying instead of paying $2,700, you'd only need to pay $1,500, and then the other $1,200 you can pay back over 5 years on your utility bill at $20 a month, which basically is a $1,200 no interest loan, which is great. So it's a really good deal. to pay $1,500 to get a new water heater. It's gas burning. It won't be a safety hazard. It won't be a health hazard. And it's going to be an exciting program. So there's a few challenges. David Simon, Paul's producer for this series, said that he has a small door to his water heater closet, and he couldn't fit a model in a year or so ago. So sometimes the issue might be the size of your closet. The heat pump water heaters are a little bit taller, maybe 4 to 6 inches taller. They might not fit in all the closets. They're a little bit wider, maybe 3 or 4 inches more in diameter. They might not fit in all the closets. So that would be a hassle to figure out. But there are new models coming on board because, there's, like everything, you need a different size and a shape. You may not care much about the color, but it has to fit in your space. So if it doesn't fit the standard one that the city is going to be installing with one of the 3 tank sizes, doesn't fit, you can negotiate with the contractor and may have to pay a little bit more. You may have to get a new door to your closet, whatever it would have to be. But if it's a standard easy installation, simply easy to access place like the garage, if you need to have an additional 240 volt line coming in from your electrical box, they'll do that for you too. If your electrical box doesn't have the capacity, if you already have a lot of electrical items in your house, and which might or might not include an electric vehicle, it depends upon what other things you're doing in your house, you may need to get a panel box upgrade too, and that would be an additional cost. But if you have the capacity there, it will make it fit within the standard price. So I'm excited about hearing about it, and it's worth thinking about. The other thing about water heaters, of course, is that the standard water heater usually lasts about from 10 to 12 years. How many of you have ever had a water heater emergency? I'll see your hand. Yeah. It goes out and then you think, oh, there's water all over the garage, but that's not the worst problem. The worst problem is what are you going to do for a shower the next morning? Thomas, my husband, and I had a similar problem maybe 10, 15 years ago. And we had been thinking about having a tankless water heater because we thought that was the best way to save water. Although it turns out that it may not really make that much difference because it takes a while for the tankless water to get warm enough as it goes through the pipes anyway. In our garage, our water heater's in the garage. But we were looking to do that, and we called the plumber we'd worked with. And I think our water heater went out on a Wednesday or something like that. And he tried to find how to get a tankless water heater. He couldn't really find one. He went to Barron Park Supply. They said, well, they could order one for next Tuesday. And we'd been washing ourselves with water from the tea kettle, that was heated up on the stove. It was like, go to Sears and buy one. And at that time, I was really surprised because the cost was over close to $1,000. And the previous time we bought a water heater, it had been like $200 or $300, but the price had gone up because they have included some air pollution technology to try to prevent too many leaks. And it was quite a change in the technology that was done over that 10 to 15 year period. In any case, we're encouraging people to plan ahead as well. So, and one of the things we'll be doing door to door, and I'm trying to encourage people to volunteer to do this. And I didn't know there's a slide, David, you could put up about that as well. As part of 350 Palo Alto, which is another nonprofit group that's all volunteer run, we are doing a canvas, and we did this in the neighborhood back in February for 2 Sunday and Saturday afternoons, and we had about 45 people go out, and we talked to or left literature at about 800 homes, and so people we're distributing a flyer that's put together by the city of Palo Alto. We're giving out information on how to figure out the age of your water heater if you don't know how old it is, and also a sticker to put on your water heater. And so this is our canvas. If you're interested to volunteer, we're going to be going out again this weekend. And if it's raining, you can still come by and pick up the materials and distribute them another time. We're giving everybody about 25 names, and you can walk your own neighborhood. And we're mostly talking to homeowners because they're the ones who can immediately make a decision to do this or not to do it. It's more
Debbie, excuse me a
Yeah.
sec. We do have graphics of these handouts that you have, and they're
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
cute.
yeah.
Will we put those up?
Yeah, yes, let's see the, yeah. So here's the sticker to put on the water heater. And this is an idea that we had to remind people to plan ahead and avoid the broken water heater emergency. And you can buy this reasonably priced electric heat pump water heater, which will be really a great opportunity. And the link is on there. So if people, if they bought a water heater 4 years ago, it's not ready to die yet, and they're not ready to make the change, this will be on the water heater when it does blow. And they can call the city of Palo Alto or call them ahead of time. So you write onto it the year that this water heater was purchased. And it's good to get a Sharpie marker pen and write on the sticker. So for me, I would say it was purchased in 2011, because I went back and I found that paperwork from that. And so it'd be 10 years old in 2021. Oh, wait, it's 2023. That's already 12 years old. So it's really time for us to, get the new water heater before it blows again. And so we also giving people a refrigerator magnet to put on, write on it with a Sharpie pen. My water heater will be 10 years old, and for me, it's 2021. So I did, go to the city's website and sign us up for the program, and we're expecting to, get in touch, have them get in touch with us shortly and set up a date to come and do this for us, which will be great. So it's actually one of the things that's important to think about, being sort of from a grassroots perspective. My academic background years ago was in social psychology, and I've always been interested in what is it that makes people change. And one of them is the ease with which you can do the change. And that's why removing these obstacles of having to find your own contractor, how you're going to pay for it, all those kind of things, that makes it so much easier. And the other thing that's important, in addition to removing the obstacles, is to engage people in the beginning steps of change. I think many of us have heard about the Great American Smoke Out, for people who are smokers to just take one day and not smoke for one day and see how it is. And that's sort of an initial act of engagement. So when we're thinking about working to create and build a movement of people for change, one of the things is simply to have a conversation about electrification. So we're sending people out person to person to talk to their neighbors and other people about the value of doing this. And here's a city program. So suddenly this becomes not some oddball thing that a bunch of crazy greenies are doing. It's, something that, our whole city is doing this. We're electrifying our city now. We've got clean electrons on the wires. It's time to get rid of natural gas. And it becomes the thing to do. You get that bandwagon rolling. So that's an important thing, is to have people see that other people like them are making this change. And then the other is active engagement, which is the idea of having the individual. Our canvassers are going out, we're giving everybody a Sharpie pen and say, here, write down how old your water heater is. And that way the person at the door is writing down, oh, okay, I bought it in 2011. And that's an active engagement. And put this on your water heater, the sticker on your water heater, put this magnet on your refrigerator. And the idea is giving people a step in that direction is a way for them to start to begin the change process. And that's an important aspect of change. When you register people to vote, I imagine many of you have done that too. Just by registering, it sure gets you into the list, but also you've done that. You've made the basic commitment that you're going to be a voter. That's why it's so important to get high school kids registered to vote before they graduate, so that by the time they turn 18, they're into the system and they think of themselves, oh, I'm a voter now. And it makes your identity happen. So that's an important aspect of making change happen, is to engage people. So that's why it's important to go door to door, so that people feel that others like them are making the change. So they're getting involved, even taking the first steps forward. So that's the thing to do it. So I just wanted to share that with all of you and encourage anybody who wants to volunteer. Maybe David could put up the slide again with our volunteer opportunity. And if you can't do it this month, this rainy weekend that's coming, we also have an alternate opportunity on Sunday afternoon of making some posters to take up to the Air Quality Management District Board meeting on Wednesday, and I can talk a little bit more about that too. But if you can't come out to canvas this weekend, we'll be going out again in May. We want to reach about 5,000 households in Palo Alto, which would be about a fifth of the housing stock. And of course, since we have a lot of rentals and apartment houses as well, that'll be a good number of people. I will
Pardon
just
me,
add,
Debbie, do you have your dates yet for May?
no, I don't, and I'll send them to you. I'll put them in the PPJC calendar.
Great.
We're gonna get through Earth Day somehow. There's a great big festival happening in Menlo Park on Earth Day, and that's the next big thing to be involved in. I was going to add something else. I forgot what it was, but oh well, it'll come to me. So anybody comments, questions?
Why don't you go ahead and talk about what's happening with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District that you're making these posters for?
Yeah, good. That's another important change that's happening. And as you probably know, we have 9 counties in the Bay Area who are part of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. They're the ones who put out the notices in the winter about spare the air, don't burn wood because of the particulate matter that becomes a health hazard for people during winter. And also they put out the smog day, try to stop driving during the summer when the smog gets too intense. So they're responsible for the health of our air quality. And the staff and the board members have been studying for the past 2 years the research that's being done on the health impacts of burning gas in the home. And they've come to the conclusion it's not safe to be burning gas because of the byproducts of combustion that are created. And so they're taking the step to propose a new rule, 2 new rules that would take effect in the next couple of 4 years. The first would be a rule that would prohibit the sale of gas burning water heaters unless they can show that they won't create nitrous oxide and they won't create formaldehyde, et cetera. Well, when you burn gas, you get those byproducts. So they're basically outlawing the sale of gas burning water heaters after 2027. And that's, it's not next week. It's a couple or 3 years down the road, but it gives the companies and the manufacturers a time to come up with, a variety of sizes of equipment and price ranges and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good thing. And so you won't, after 2027, if this rule passes, which is coming to a vote next Wednesday, the 15th, if it passes, you won't be able to go to Home Depot in 2027 and say, I want a new water heater that burns gas. It'll only be a heat pump or electric kind that's there. And then similarly, the second rule would be Rule 9.6, which would ban the sale of gas burning furnaces by 2029. Because furnaces burn, of course, even more than water heaters do. Water heaters burn continuously all year long, furnaces often the winter period. But this is really make a significant change throughout the Bay Area. And it's kind of exciting. If we pass this rule in the Bay Area, we'll also be lucky that the Southern California Air District that serves the Los Angeles Air Basin is watching what we're doing very closely, and their staff is, intending to follow in the footsteps of the Bay Area. So again, our area is being a leader for the rest of the state, and then hopefully this will move across the country, and it will really make a difference in how much methane is going up into the atmosphere. One other thing that is important to think about is the Bay Area Air Quality Management District is managed by local representatives. It's a board of directors that includes 24 people from throughout the 9-county area. And depending upon the population of each county, there might be 1 to 4 representatives from that county. Santa Clara County has 4 people because it's one of the most populous counties. And that includes Vicki Vinker, who's our new city council member from Palo Alto, Carlos Lopez, who's a council member from Campbell, Margaret Abikoga, who is a council member and previously had been on the Air District Board for a while as well, from Mountain View, and also Supervisor Otto Lee, who's from the San Jose area. So we have 4 people who are representing us in Santa Clara County who are on this board. And for those who live in San Mateo County, there are 3 representatives, again, based on population size. And that includes Supervisor Noelia Corzo, who's just newly elected to the Board of Supervisors. She's from North County, Daly City area, I believe. And Ray Mueller, who is a former Menlo Park council member, who was elected also just very recently to the city council, to the Board of Supervisors. And the 3rd person there, suddenly I've just forgotten who it is. It's the city council member from one of the cities, and I've lost track of it. I'll find it. Anyway, there's 3 from San Mateo County, and 2 of them are totally new. Oh, I know that the 3rd one is Davina Hurt, who's from Belmont. She's a Belmont City Council member, and she's actually the vice chair of the whole Air Quality District Board of Directors, because she's been on that before. All these council people and supervisors, they sort of have to do a year or 2 on these regional boards as part of their city council service. And, it's hard enough to be a city council member or supervisor and pay attention to all that stuff. If you've ever been to a meeting, you know how much they deal with. And then also to go to these regional boards and pay attention to that kind of issues. So they're really amazing public servants, and even if we don't agree with their politics, sometimes we got to give them credit for trying and doing all this hard work. So
maybe what's a good way for people who are interested in seeing this regulation get passed? Should they contact these local representatives, or is there a general phone number, email for the management district, or how do we sound off before next Wednesday?
Yeah. If people have time, I think the best way would be a quick phone number or email to these local reps. And I can send that to you, Paul, so that you can send it out in your follow-up message. If that would happen, before Tuesday midnight or something, because the vote will be taken on Wednesday sometime.
So just a reminder, we do send out follow-up emails to our webinars and the brown bag lunches with additional reading links and things like that. And we will include the information about how to get a hold of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to encourage passage of this. Before we went on, you mentioned how many towns in the area have already passed regulations to ban electric gas water heaters. What was that number?
Yeah, it's the last I knew, it was 58 cities and counties in California, which, we have 200 or more of all of them. We have 53 counties, so there's lots more cities. But 58 cities and counties, including big ones like San Francisco, Oakland, LA, have banned the use of gas appliances of any kind in new construction. So all new houses through much of California now have to have just all electric, which is, again, people recognizing the importance of electrifying construction. And that's wonderful, because the new houses are going to be just run with clean, green electricity, which is exciting. But of course, we know how few new houses are being built, and we know how many more we need to build, and we know how many of our old dilapidated wooden shacks there are here in California. So we all need to think about the biggest lump here is retrofitting the older construction. And that's where it becomes problematic. And, very wealthy people can pay the money that they need to pay. There's some really good rebates too from Peninsula Clean Energy for those who live in San Mateo County, and Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and San Jose Clean Energy for those who live in Santa Clara outside of Palo Alto. So the rebates really make it also quite reasonable for middle income level people to go ahead and make these changes. It's several $1,000s and maybe even up to 5 or 10 to change a heating system, depending upon how old your house is. But it's within the doable range for most people. But low income people have real challenges. Obviously, many people who live in our communities do not have the ability to, take care of a $500 car repair or a $500 medical appointment. So there's a lot of work that's being done to figure out how to support low-income people, and many of whom, of course, live in apartment houses that totally need to be retrofitted as well. And the disincentive for people who live in apartment houses is really a challenge, because in some cases they pay the utility bill, but the landlord owns the equipment, and the landlord has no incentive to change it to a more unpolluting, healthier and safer set of equipment. So it's a real challenge. So we have to work on that with, policy issues at the state level to retrofit all those dwelling units that are running on gas that need to be changed.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How does this affect people who have radiant heating in their houses? I mean, how does that get transferred?
The question, I guess, is how is your radiant heating work? My recollection of a radiator was when I was a little kid living in Maryland. We had a big thing.
These are copper pipes that are embedded in the concrete slabs that the Eichlers and the
Eichler houses, yeah. So the question is, then it's usually water that goes through those copper pipes, and how is that water heated? So
No, it's gas. It's gas.
it's heated with gas.
It's
a gas boiler.
It's a gas boiler, and
Yes.
heats up the water that goes through. Yeah.
So that's not going to qualify for the city of Palo Alto's current program, as far as I know. But if you were interested in the question, because a lot of Eichlers exist in Palo Alto and in surrounding areas too, like Sunnyvale and places like that. My suggestion to you, Gwen and Dick, would be to call the city of Palo Alto, go on the website and call the person and say, I've got an Eichler house. We're using a water boiler to heat the water for this radiant heating system. Does it work? Is that the kind of a water heater that you can exchange as part of this program?
Mhm.
If it's the same water heater that's heating your water for your kitchen sink and the shower and stuff,
No,
maybe it's a different water heater. Okay.
no.
So that would be the question I would ask. And I'm
Mhm.
sorry that I don't know that information. I should have asked it when I was talking to Scott Melberg from the city yesterday, because that's a really important point for, quite a lot of people are Eichler owners. That's true.
Yeah.
So I will ask him on behalf of others, but you want to ask him yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Or what I'd be interested in hearing is people's ideas for trying to duplicate these efforts in other areas. Palo Alto has the unique situation where they have their own utility system, but for those of us that are on like Silicon Valley Clean Energy, that covers multiple towns. Although as Debbie mentioned, Silicon Valley Clean Energy does have a good, strong rebate program going out here. It's good enough that we were able to talk our landlord into making the switch to a heat pump from a gas water heater. This is a few years before he had balked at installing a free low flow toilet here when that program was offered by the water company. And so we weren't sure, but he jumped right at the chance to replace the water heater with one of these. So what do people think of the possibility of rolling this out? Is this a method that excites you, that you'd be interested in getting involved in? Will you sign up for Debbie's Canvas this weekend? So,
Actually, yeah, I would love to hear if anybody's interested in, because it could be a matter of writing a letter to the board of directors of Silicon Valley Clean Energy or Peninsula Clean Energy. There are people, let me take a step back. There's a whole group of people called Fossil Free Buildings for Silicon Valley. It's an advocacy group, again, volunteer run, with people from San Mateo and Santa Clara County. And once we finish this Palo Alto thing, folks there are going to start pushing out to the local people in both of those counties to try to get a similar program going. It may not be quite as simple because you'd have to figure out how to pay for it, but at least not to have to choose the contractor and all that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to get involved in that kind of advocacy, and who knows, maybe eventually a door-to-door kind of thing as well, I'm going to put my email in the chat and just drop me a note and say, yeah, I'm ready to write a letter and say something about it, because we need people to get involved. And that's one of the good things about having Silicon Valley Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy, is they're locally run, nonprofit, government-sponsored agencies, and their boards of directors are the city council members of the cities in that county. And it's accessible. It's not like going to the Public Utilities Commission, which is 5 individuals who are not elected, appointed by the governor, who makes so many decisions that PG&E has to follow. So these are our local reps. We know them by name in our cities. And they're much more responsive.
Could you repeat who these letters would, how many letters would these be and who are they going to?
Well, they would go to the board of directors in you of course live in Palo Alto, but of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And I will, we can follow up with Paul with getting some names and numbers. We're not ready to develop a campaign yet, but it's definitely, within the next 6 months, efforts will be made to engage people in writing letters. So definitely we'll do it. If you'd like to get involved in that, just drop me a note.
Okay.
I think I heard Joan asking a question.
Yes, Debbie, hi.
Hi.
Always good to see you out there leading.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, we went without power for the longest time ever recently. We had no power for 2.5 days. And last year we were pleased to install a heat pump system, which of course couldn't heat the house without power.
Yeah.
And we're ready. Our water heater is old. We would do that. But what's your image of pushing people to electrify when it appears that PG&E and our electric system is not keeping up with even the movement toward electric vehicles? I have to say, in the freezing cold, it was nice to have hot water.
Yeah. And that's a very legitimate concern. I mean, and it's not good. There's two answers. One is, well, we have to keep our gas. But unfortunately, we know if that happens, we'll continue to be creating climate change and the bad weather conditions are going to get even worse. So we can't keep our gas. We have to find out how to make the change that we need to make. And that's why the next step in advocacy is to say, well, listen, that we need technology so that we can keep the electricity going better. And that might include, undergrounding electric utility lines, which is pretty expensive. It might include working with more people to put solar on their roof, which doesn't work when it's a rainstorm or in the deep of night, but they could also have batteries. And part of the new rules about putting solar on the roof is that if people want to install solar actually after the 15th of April, if they have a battery, they will get back more as a payback. So they're trying to encourage people with batteries. The batteries are also expensive, but they're not that expensive, and it will also pay off over time. My daughter installed solar on a roof in Oakland and a battery. There was a tree that fell down in their neighborhood that everybody around them, they lost the power. They didn't even know about it until they read about it in the paper, because it was right 2 blocks from their house, because they just had a system that was automatically set up that when the power goes out, the battery kicks in. So that's one system. It's expensive. So again, we'd have to support people who don't have the income to pay for that. The other option, which is a piece of technology that's coming down the road and already exists in a intermediate stage, is using the car battery. If you have an electric vehicle, the typical Tesla, I've heard, has enough juice in it to be able to power a typical house for 3 days. Run your computers, run your lights, run your basic stuff. Now, if you're doing arc welding in the basement, maybe not, but So the car battery is really a source of additional juice that can support a house. You don't need perhaps to get an external battery, but it's not connected correctly yet. And so that's where we need to have regulations that say a car battery needs to be able to hold juice and get it from the grid, but it also needs to be able to redistribute it back to your house. And some of you may be aware of this truck called the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the electric version of the Ford 150F car or truck. That's on the market now, and it has a good battery and also has a cord that comes out from the car. You can plug that cord into a power strip, and then you can plug appliances into that power strip. And when we did the electric house tour back in September, one of the people brought one of these trucks and stood it up in front of one of the houses on the tour, and he had put the power strip, visible, and into it he plugged a blender and a radio and a lawnmower and a couple of power tools, and he had the radio going in the blender. He was making drinks for people. You can do a lot with the juice in a car battery. And in Japan, it's already a technologically integrated system. Many people who have electric vehicles are also powering their house when they need to. It's sort of an integrated system. The technology just needs to be allowed to happen and then marketed. So it's, I would say probably, depending upon how much push there is from folks like yourself who froze cold because you didn't have electricity for a couple of days, to start saying, hey, we need to do this. And it will be early adopters who buy the Ford F-150 Lightning truck and figure out how to warm themselves. But we need to integrate the systems into the wall of our houses, basically. So
Yeah, that's really a topic for a whole other program, isn't it? The
Yeah.
need to rework our entire electrical grid.
Yeah.
Because it's under hundreds of different owners now and things like that. We're right at the end of the time. I do like to open up for anybody who might have announcements of upcoming events. Any other announcements out there of upcoming vigils or activities? All right.
I
well, go ahead.
just have a quick, it's not really an announcement. I just want to say I really appreciate Debbie for your talk and all the information you provided and everything. I did just want to have one little reminder. I think that often all of us who are interested in climate, reversing climate change and doing the right thing, a lot of us automatically feel like, okay, if you go electric, that's the way to go. That's the way to go, and that's fine. Unfortunately, I just want to remind people that isn't fine. It's not perfect. I'm very concerned with mining of minerals and some toxic minerals that are not properly disposed of, and just mining itself harms the earth so badly, and mining is going to explode all over the world. We need lithium mines. We need more copper mines. So I just feel like, yes, for now, that is a great way to go, but I think we need to be mindful of in the future, just making everything as efficient as humanly possible so that we can minimize the impact of what we do on this earth. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Here, here.
That's a
Jill.
good comment, Jill. It tells us how complex this climate question is, right, Debbie?
Yeah, it's very
There's a lot
complex.
to be done. But
Being efficient and not using wasteful resources is really, really important. Yeah.
Exactly.
and I
Thank you.
think that's one of the final values of what Debbie's trying to organize here is just contacting people and making them think about we have to substantially change soon is a really important thing to have going on to get this started. So lots to think about. Debbie Mytels, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great presentation. Thank you, everyone out there. They're all muted, but they're clapping. I can see that.
Thanks to you too, George.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for coming. And not sure when the next one is, but stay tuned.
Good.
Be back.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.